Sometimes, the future whispers to us. A dream, a gut feeling, a cryptic warning. Most of us shrug it off. But what if those eerie flashes of insight actually came true? These are 10 chilling stories where premonitions weren't just weird, they were right. Disturbingly right. Whether it's fate, intuition, or something darker, these tales will have you questioning reality itself. But before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for new spooky stories every week. 1. The Man Who Dreamed 9/11. In the months before the 9/11 attacks, a man named Rick recounted having recurring dreams of falling buildings, screaming, and ash. He lived in New York City and worked just blocks from the Twin Towers. In his dreams, he always woke up in a panic at 8:45 a.m., same time the first plane struck. Friends teased him, thinking it was just stress. But on the morning of September 11th, Rick called in sick for the first time in years. When asked why, he said, "I just had a bad feeling." His entire office floor was destroyed. He survived, but 5 of his co-workers didn't. Later, he described exact details that hadn't yet aired on the news. To this day, he claims someone was trying to warn him. Psychics call it clairvoyance. Skeptics call it coincidence. But Rick? He just calls it a second chance. 2. The self-written obituary. Zach Bowen was a bartender and Iraq War veteran struggling with PTSD. In the weeks before his shocking death in 2006, Zach told friends he felt like he was already dead. He journaled obsessively, leaving behind pages that eerily resembled a self-written obituary. In them, he spoke of guilt, nightmares, and an inevitable end. On October 17th, police were called to a hotel rooftop in New Orleans. Zach had jumped to his death. In his pocket was a note directing them to his apartment. What they found inside was horrifying. His girlfriend Addie Hall, murdered and dismembered. Scrawled on the walls were confessions in Zach's handwriting. He had predicted his own mental spiral weeks prior, even describing how he thought he'd die. One entry simply read, "I'll be flying soon. Just not with wings." Whether his fate was written by trauma or something supernatural, Zach's words haunt everyone who reads them. 3. The twins' last ride. Twin sisters Ava and Lily did everything together. From matching tattoos to taking spontaneous road trips. But one night, Ava woke up in tears, saying she'd dreamed they died in a fiery crash on a winding mountain road. She even described the curve, the guardrail, and the color of the truck that hit them. Blue. Lily brushed it off, saying, "We're invincible." But the dream stuck with Ava. A week later, they were driving through the Smoky Mountains when Ava panicked and insisted they pull over. Moments later, a blue semi-truck barreled around the curve, swerving into their lane. Had they not stopped, they would have been directly in its path. Shocked, Ava collapsed in tears. The dream had been precise, down to the mile marker. She never drove on a mountain road again. Some say twins have a deeper connection, one that transcends space and time. Ava believes her dream wasn't a warning, it was a gift. 4. The pilot who skipped his own crash. In 1979, a seasoned American Airlines pilot, Bob L., had a nightmare that he died in a fiery crash while flying Flight 191. He couldn't shake the feeling. He begged his supervisor to take him off the route, citing a bad vibe and offering to cover any other shift. His request was granted. On May 25, Flight 191 departed from O'Hare Airport in Chicago without Bob, and crashed minutes after takeoff. All 271 passengers and crew died in what became one of the deadliest aviation disasters in U.S. history. When Bob heard the news, he reportedly fainted. Later, he described seeing the exact sequence in his dream. A left engine detaching, the plane rolling, and the fireball on impact. Officials later confirmed that was precisely what happened. Bob left aviation shortly after. Some called him lucky. Others believed he was cursed with knowledge he wasn't supposed to have. His dream saved his life, but not his peace of mind. 5. The Tohoku tsunami warning. In early 2011, a Japanese grandmother named Haruka became deeply unsettled. She told neighbors she had dreamt of her seaside town being swallowed by a black wall. She refused to let her grandchildren play outside. She hoarded bottled water, canned food, and candles. Family members urged her to see a doctor. But she kept insisting, "It's coming. The wave is coming." On March 11, the 9.0 magnitude Tohoku earthquake struck. The tsunami followed minutes later, a towering surge that wiped out entire neighborhoods. Haruka's home, on higher ground, survived. She had forced her family to visit that day and stay put just in case. Her neighbors weren't as lucky. Afterward, Haruka told reporters that it wasn't a dream. It was a message. Seismologists say aftershocks and foreshocks can cause unease in animals and humans. But how could she have described the water's height? Or its arrival time? With such detail? Haruka simply smiled and said, "The ocean speaks. You just have to listen." Before we move on to our next 5 stories, have you ever had a premonition? If so, leave us a comment. 6. The boy who saw his funeral. 6-year-old Cameron from Edinburgh insisted he used to live on a remote Scottish island called Barra with a white house, a black and white dog, and a view of the sea. His parents assumed it was imagination. But then Cameron started crying about a car that caught fire, saying he died outside and had watched his own funeral. He named the road, the family members, and even the brand of car. Curiosity led his family to take him to Barra. Shockingly, the details lined up. Locals confirmed the house, the car, and even the name Cameron had given as his old dad. The death had occurred years earlier in a crash, exactly as described. Cameron cried when he saw the gravestone. He said it was his. Psychologists chalk it up to cryptomnesia, forgotten memories reassembled. Others think it's evidence of reincarnation or spiritual tethering. But Cameron stopped talking about it after the trip. He simply said, "That chapter's over now," and never mentioned it again. 7. The clock that stopped. In a small town in Ireland, a widow named Maureen owned a large grandfather clock that her husband had maintained lovingly until his passing. Ever since his funeral, the clock had ticked irregularly. One night, Maureen woke up from a dream in which her husband told her, "I'll see you at 6. That same day, the clock stopped at exactly 6 p.m. At 6:03, Maureen suffered a sudden stroke. She survived, but was left partially paralyzed and unable to speak. Her family was shocked by the timing. Even stranger, the clock resumed ticking 3 days later and has kept perfect time since. Maureen now points to the clock every day at 6, smiling. Locals have dubbed it the ghost clock. Scientists say electromagnetic fluctuations or temperature changes could explain the clock's behavior. But the odds of it stopping and restarting so precisely are astronomical. Some believe her husband came back, not to take her, but to warn her. Whatever the truth is, Maureen's eyes still sparkle every evening as the hands inch toward 6. 8. The sinking of the Titanic. Before it happened. In 1898, 14 years before the Titanic sank, author Morgan Robertson wrote a novella titled Futility, or The Wreck of the Titan. The story followed a massive, unsinkable British ocean liner named Titan that hit an iceberg in the North Atlantic and sank. Sound familiar? Both the fictional Titan and the real Titanic had similar dimensions, lacked enough lifeboats, and sank in April after hitting icebergs on their starboard sides. The eerie parallels don't end there. Both ships were carrying elite passengers, departed from England, and were en route to New York. At first, critics dismissed the similarities as coincidence or informed speculation. But after the Titanic tragedy in 1912, Robertson's book was reprinted with renewed fascination. Was it just fiction? Or something more? Some theorists suggest collective unconscious knowledge, remote viewing, or that Robertson tapped into something beyond normal perception. Even skeptics admit, the similarities are uncanny. Was it luck, research, or a premonition in disguise? 9. The Aberfon School Disaster Dream. In 1966, a Welsh mining village called Aberfon suffered a horrifying tragedy when a collapsing coal waste tip buried a school, killing 144 people, mostly children. But days before the event, a 10-year-old girl named Errol Mae Jones told her mother she had a strange dream. In it, she saw her school covered by something black and said, "I'm not afraid to die." Errol was one of the victims. After the disaster, her mother reported the dream to psychiatrist John Barker, who had been collecting cases of premonitions. The Aberfon tragedy became one of the earliest documented examples of children predicting their own deaths. Barker later received over 60 letters from people who claimed they, too, had premonitions of the disaster. Dreams of black waves, collapsing buildings, and children screaming. Skeptics say hindsight biases interpretation. But the volume and specificity of the reports are chilling. What made Errol dream of her own end? Did something warn her? Or did she simply sense the weight of something impending? 10. David Booth and the plane crash. In May 1983, David Booth, a Cincinnati man, began having the same terrifying dream every night. He saw a jetliner veering sideways in mid-air, flipping over, then erupting in flames. The dream shook him so much that he contacted the FAA, who listened but took no action. 10 days later, on May 25, American Airlines Flight 191 took off from Chicago O'Hare. Seconds after takeoff, one engine detached from the wing. The plane rolled, turned sideways, and crashed, killing all 273 people aboard. The sequence played out exactly as Booth described it. Though he didn't name the flight or date, the resemblance to his dream stunned investigators. He was interviewed by news outlets and even appeared on national television, visibly shaken by the experience. Many questioned, how could he have known? Was it coincidence? Anxiety? Or something beyond the normal reach of human perception? David Booth never had another prophetic dream. But that one nightmare still haunts aviation folklore. And anyone who believes that the future sometimes leaks into the present. Sometimes the scariest stories aren't about ghosts or monsters. They're about how close we all are to fate, and how often we hear it knocking before it arrives. If you enjoyed this journey through eerie premonitions, like and subscribe for more unsettling tales from the edges of reality. And if you've ever had a dream that came true, maybe it wasn't just a dream.